Okay, so I wanted to talk about something that I haven't really brought up. I don't think as a topic before, and it's having to do with um this thing that I've discussed before that I feel is operating in the background. Um, I don't know if it's some kind of like overlay on reality, but it's something. I don't think it's a physical being per se. I definitely don't think it's human beings. But this thing has the ability to control outcomes of events, move things forward in directions. It uses puppets to help forward its plans. And basically, I guess the topic is I'm going to call it the agenda. And I know that's a kind of a popular buzzword, but I think it's just one really big thing running in the background that's out to the agenda of this thing. And it's basically like it's removing the spirituality um, way of living from the individual here. And I'm not speaking for like people in other countries or you know for other conscious beings like dogs, cats. I can't speak to any of those experiences, but just I think that in society, culture, um, people here um, in the world, I think that the agenda is to pull them away from that spiritual, that part of us that's not here in this this physical world that we find ourselves in, this life experience that we're going through, um, and it's just this agenda, it moves through time, right? So that um, if history is anything near what we've been told in terms of, okay, well, there was human beings here, in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, as we're told. um, it's not just a story made up in a certain year. Let's say that's true. Then you know technology that we have is given out at a drip pace, right? So um, you know any progress that's made technologically is part of the plan, right? It's part of the agenda, like so that you know um, just as like radio, television, the internet, these things are all they're all let out at a drip pace, right? So that it doesn't really matter what has really happened in history. Was there an advanced civilization that held all these things in the past, the internet, everything, um, and it was just wiped out, and there was some people that knew about these technologies that have them hidden somewhere and are have been letting them out slowly by slowly, or um, have we just been going along at the pace where they say, and um, this thing is allowing people to have the inspirations to create these things, right? Like I said, all these, of course, of course, I left out the telephone, telegraph, but the things to broadcast things, right? Basically, audio and visual. So or radio is just audio, but still, television, movies, internet, so that all these things going forward, so that you came to a point where there's Y2K, right? Um, where everyone's worried about that situation, and then now seemingly the popular thing is the AI, right? Um, and it just plays into that thing where I said it's just using fear. This thing, I feel like it uses fear as some type of fuel, you know, And so the agenda is going to roll forward through time. So that I think when you look back and you say, okay, well, there's people that are the movers, in this world. Again, like I said, to me they're just merely puppets. Whether it be Rockefeller, Prescott Bush, um, Henry Ford, all these type of things, and the secret societies might be behind these people. But it doesn't matter because they're still just, they're just being used to forward this agenda, right? So that you can say, well, there's all the aspects of where we are now, right? Currently, um, indoctrination in schools, um, the degradation of morality in the country from all these freakish things being introduced, and this whole idea of you know uh, tolerance of all kind of nonsense that's going on now. It's just all part of it. But I think the easiest thing to look at and say, okay, well, this is definitely something that is forwarded by this thing, and then also by the agenda and all these puppets that forward these things, and it's the wars, right? It's the world wars. This is something that definitely, you know there are narratives to it, but it's happened recently enough ago that you could, up until maybe 20, 30 years ago, you could have probably spoken to individuals who were involved in the world wars, one and two, as well as, um, if they have experience, that if they were in Korea or Vietnam. But basically, when you look at the wars, I saw this um, thing recently, and it was a Quantum of Conscience, and he was talking about the movie Valkyrie with Tom Cruise, and I guess his stance was, well, why couldn't you know this guy just find someone to sacrifice himself, for the greater good, so and so, and that wasn't his take necessarily, but he's just saying, like, in terms of criticizing the movie and the story of the military and everything. But anyway, um, I guess my thing is that, we can it's easy to blame individuals, right? You know, but since all the world is a stage, as they say, that does it really matter, you know, um, who the individual is? In other words, like in the movie Valkyrie, they're trying to find a way to take out Hitler, right? And the problem is that Hitler, to me, when I look at it, it's you look back at history, and he's just a puppet, and he's just a person that history points to. Now, did he do all these things? Did he give these speeches? Sure. There's documentation of it. No problem. These things happen. But here's the problem. Like, let's say in the movie Valkyrie, and let's say everyone, they knew what they had to do, and let's say they took him out. Well, I mean, if the agenda is planned from something deeper, um, it would have been someone else, right? It would have been some other person that would have been in charge, and you think World War II wouldn't have gone down if they were able to take out, Hitler? I'm I'm sure it would have went down the same things would happen. All those lives would be lost. Um, you have all the things that came out of it socially, politically, things like, with the formation of Israel and all these things. But I'm saying, like, you look at these events that happen and you point to them, and it's easy to say, oh, okay, this happened, thus this happened, thus the war, right? But I'm saying, if the agenda was to create this war, it could have been something else, someone else to take that part, right? It's not this one man that, emboldened a nation to go and go and do all these violent acts and take all these lives in cold blood. Um, Also, too, to say that like the situation in Pearl Harbor where America joined the war, like America would have joined the war if they prevented the strike on Pearl Harbor. I'm sure America would have entered the war anyway. Would have just been a different circumstance, right? It's like World War One. Do you think the killing of one man, Franz Ferdinand, um, is any kind of a catalyzing event of to create a world war? And for that matter, again, for the United States to get involved into the war, the whole Lusitania incident, right? Like, I mean, it would have been something else, right? Um, if there was intelligence and there was a way to you know, prevent what happened to the Lusitania, it would have been something else, right? And all I'm saying is this thing, this agenda that wanted these world wars, you know, it's it was going to happen, and individuals, they're not going to prevent that. Is all I'm saying, right? So, like, take socio-political problems, um, that are baked into like the divisions, right, of North and South countries, right, North and South Vietnam, or North and South Korea, or the East and West of uh, East Germany, West Germany, the artificial divides, right? Those are things that, okay, well, you got lead to conflict in Vietnam, right? And then, the U.S. is there, but they ramp up their involvement because of what happened at the Gulf of Tonkin. And like I said, you know, those things, those situations, it could have been another situation, but they were just used to, as the catalyst, in the narrative of what happened in Vietnam. And like I said, the step up of U.S. involvement in the Gulf of Tonkin, if it wasn't that, it would have been something else, right? Now, are there false flags? Of course, these things are all part of it, but they're all. It's all, like I said, it's all part of the agenda. If it wasn't that, it would have been something else, right? Um, so in the end of the day, the conclusion is there is this agenda, and I don't think we're best served to try to look into what has happened in the past because it doesn't really matter now. Because if the agenda is for World War to happen, World War II, say, right? It's going to happen, and it doesn't matter if you had a time machine, you went back and you removed certain pieces off the board. It's still going to happen anyway because that's the agenda, right? Of this thing. It has certain abilities to sway outcomes, control events. It has, like I said, it has puppets ready to do its work. Um, and even today we see things that are going on, and you see the patterns of things happening and things trending toward a certain way, and there's a lot of people I see on the internet. They're either quote unquote trying to wake people up, or um, quote unquote wake people up and say, hey, this and this and this. But at the end of the day, it's like the movie Soylent Green, right? I don't know if you've seen that movie, but at the end, I guess it's Charlton Heston, I guess, and they're carrying him off, and he's screaming, "Soylent Green is people," and you look at that, and it just, I think it shows, and I don't think the world is any different today than it is in that movie, or in our culture. That is to say that, let's say that happened around, and you saw that, right? Would you be inclined to think, wow, this guy's just crazy, right? He's just babbling on about something and he doesn't know what he's talking about? Or would you actually, in the way he approached it and said it, or would you say, hey, wait a minute, this guy might be onto something? Maybe I need to look into this, right? So, in other words, you know, if there's an agenda and things are going to go down the way they're going to go down, that people aren't going to change it, right? I think in the end of the day, it's just, for me, is like I said before, don't live in fear, question everything, right? And then act accordingly, right? And just walk your path. I mean, you can't control any of the outside things anyway. Um, all the things on a screen, it has no bearing on you unless it does, right? And at that point, then it's not on the screen anymore. And just walk your path. And when it's your time, it's your time. And until it is, just follow your path and live that spiritual, as much as you can. I mean, I know we have to pay to live, but as much as you can, just keep that spiritual side and follow that. You know, I think I think life will be more fulfilling that way for everyone. But anyway, I guess I just wanted to talk about that, and I will talk again later. Thanks.